It's now time for Sports Scene. Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris is an informative show with excellent guests. Now, here is Greg.
Welcome to Sports Scene, our May edition. Glad you're with us. Greg Bicouvaris along with Adam Armstrong, our producer. Of course, Mongolian Grill is our featured sponsor right here for our May edition of Sports Scene, produced by Hampton Roads Media Group and also Audacy as well. Outback Steakhouse in Virginia Beach, Kempsville location, delicious steaks and all of your faves for lunch and dinner daily. Let's welcome Woods Woolwine. He's the general manager of the Newport News Golf Club. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you having me on.
Very good. We've had him on Sports Highlights. We've had him on the TV Sports Minute, which you'll see on CW as well. Let's talk about golf. Let's talk about the state of golf in 2025. How is it on the peninsula?
It's booming right now. I mean, when we have good weather, the courses are packed. So I mean, it's great. It's all based on the COVID. After the COVID years, it just it's come alive.
Very good. Let's talk about what you're seeing out there as far as clubs and what you're seeing as far as new equipment.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the equipment's pretty similar. It's really coming down to the shafts now that's making a big difference in the golfers. But Srixon's come a long ways with their product. You see a lot of guys on tour playing it, a lot of guys winning on tour with it. Titleist is still Titleist. You know, they're one of the top club manufacturers out there. And then you got Ping Callaway, still big products out there.
What about local tournaments in Newport News and Williamsburg?
Well, we've got a lot of charity events that we host here at Newport News Golf Club. But amateur events. There's a good amateur tour, Tidewater Golf Tour, that basically captures all the amateur events now. You don't have as many of the individual courses hosting amateur events just because you have the leagues like that are playing 3 to 4 times a month.
Very good. And talking right here, too, Woods Woolwine from the Newport News Golf Club. Don't forget Buffalo Wild Wings and Newport News, your place for wings and the sports headquarters on the peninsula for food and a lot of fun as well. Talking to Woods Woolwine. Woods, when you talk about Williamsburg, people for years have thought of Kingsmill and Ford's Colony. Kingsmill especially because they've hosted men's tournaments and women's tournaments on the PGA and LPGA. It's not quite the same there anymore. It's still a solid course. I was glad to see the NCAA Division III tournament, but what are your thoughts?
Actually, I just played it this past Friday. I was in great shape. I grew up playing there, so it's like home for me. And to go back and play it and see it in such good shape, it's a shame that the tours, they couldn't fund the tournaments there anymore, because the Anheuser-Busch back in the late 80s, early 90s was a great event. And, they got to the point where they were hosting in October, which allowed for some of the big names to come in. And then you had the LPGA try it out. It's just the funding wasn't there for it. But you have a lot of nice courses up in Williamsburg. There's plenty to choose from besides Kingsmill.
Yeah, a lot of sponsorship and money take a lot to get a tournament going as well. Talking to Woods Woolwine right here from the Newport News Golf Club as well, and the different courses too. Some courses play differently. Talk about what your thoughts have been over the years for the River Course.
The River Course is a great layout. It goes through the community and then ends up back on the water by the James River. But it's from all the way back, it's as challenging as you want to get. And then if you want to move up a set of tees, it becomes more fair. They changed it a lot when the ladies came in. They made it a little bit more playable carry-wise. So, the fairways are a little bigger, the teeing grounds and all that. So when they changed all that, it definitely changed the dynamics of the course. But, it's still, if you want to play it all the way back, it's all you want.
Talking to Woods Woolwine, don't forget Raising Cane's Best Chicken Fingers in Yorktown. They're all over the south side as well. Visit their Yorktown location today. Get some great food. Go by and see Paul and the wonderful staff 7 days a week for lunch, dinner, and they're open really late at night as well. Let's talk about the dynamics before we take a break. Juniors, seniors, and adults as far as all collaborating. What are you seeing as far as pros and cons as far as the golf game?
We here get a lot of seniors. We've got about 5 different senior associations that play here, so we see a lot of senior play. Obviously on the weekend, that's when we get more of the junior and the younger crowd playing. But it's pretty evenly mixed here. Like I said, weekday mornings you're going to see probably 80% seniors out here playing. And then in the afternoon you start getting the working men and women. and some of the juniors out here.
Very good. Talking to Woods Woolwine as well. And Woods, where are some of the places that you played outside of the state? I know South Carolina is a really great place for golf.
Yeah, funny, my son's down in Charleston, so I'm looking forward to going down there and playing some of the courses down there because I got a buddy that's pro down at Hilton Head. But we do a lot of traveling to Pinehurst. We go down and play the Pinehurst courses, play just about all the Pinehurst courses down there, and they've got probably 50 or so down there. But besides that, it's Virginia for me.
Very good. That sounds good to me as well. Great place. You got it right here on the peninsula. Great golf courses in Virginia Beach as well. Stay tuned for more of our May edition of Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris on the Audacy app and wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube and social media. Stay tuned. Virginia Beach, it's here. Mongolian Grill. All you can eat hibachi style on a huge grill. Delicious food, beverages, and fun. Dine in daily or get delivery. 2029 Lynn Haven Parkway, Salem Crossing. See you there.
Now let's get back to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris.
And back to our second segment with Woods Woolwine, the general manager of Newport News Golf Club. This is our May edition of Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris on the Audacy app and wherever you get your podcast as well. Mi Hogar, delicious Mexican food in Norfolk, a tradition for decades. Go by and see Armando and the staff for lunch and dinner 7 days a week. Spring and summer headquarters, great adult beverages as well. Food, appetizers, great hospitality at Mi Hogar. Let's welcome back Woods Woolwine. Wood, what's the biggest difference, Wood, when somebody is used to playing on a private course like the James River Country Club or Kingsmill compared to a public course?
On the public courses, you get a lot more play. So the wear and tear is a lot more. For instance, we do around 67,000 rounds a year, where you get your private clubs like Williamsburg Country Club, James River, Governor's Land. They're probably doing 10 to 15,000 rounds a year. So it's obvious that you can keep up the conditions a little better because you have more time to maintain. And also, most of the private clubs close 1 day a week just so they can do maintenance. So it gives them a big advantage versus a public or a semi-private course.
You and I talked about that on Sports Highlights, the TV interview show. I remember we talked about even Curtis Strange. He lived in Kingsmill for all those years. He used to belong to the James River Country Club just to get away and concentrate.
Yeah, it gives them a place where they can go where people won't bother them. When he lived up at Kingsmill, he'd come down to the driving range, drive his truck down to the starter shack, get some balls and everything. And right when he gets out of the truck, it's autograph, because you have, so many people that are staying at the resort out there. So, when he goes down, when you go to a private course like James River, they don't bother you. They expect you to be there, and they just let you do your thing. And his big thing was, when he was on the golf course, it was his job. It's like sitting in your office and somebody coming and bothering you while you're trying to work, and that's the way he treated the driving range.
Very nice. Midtown Eats and Sandbar Grill. Go by and see Gary and the great staff. 736 J. Clyde Morris Boulevard for lunch and dinner in Newport News. Great darts, music, entertainment, excellent food and beverages. Feel at home the minute you walk in. Lots of sports on TV at Midtown Eats and Sandbar Grill, a wonderful establishment on the peninsula. And you mentioned that too. I don't think Curtis would have he didn't really play in the smartphone era. He really wouldn't have liked smartphones and selfies that much.
Absolutely not.
All right, well, let's talk about the PGA Championship. It's this week. Let's give us what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I just saw something on TV about the amount of rain. They've had 4 or 5 inches of rain, so it'll be interesting to see. The tour events don't like to do lift, clean, and place, but it might be an event where they're going to have to do it due to the rain they've had. But Scheffler's playing good. You got to look at Scheffler, JT's had some strong showings. Even Fowler's had some decent play, so it's going to be interesting.
You don't see the same person winning back-to-back majors that much.
No, you don't. It's tough, but I tell you, if somebody can do it, I think Scheffler can do it the way he's playing. I remember back in the day when Curtis, won his Opens back-to-back, but you never saw anybody, repeating 2 majors in the same year.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's hard to, let's say, win the Masters and, the PGA Championship or the U.S. Open or the Open. It doesn't seem. I'd love to see one golfer win all 4 1 year, just one time, men or women.
Grand Slam, yeah. It's such a grind. They put in so much work just preparing for each one of those. It's such a grind. That's why it's tough. And each course that they play on is different. Obviously they play Augusta the same every year, but they rotate the the PGA Championship and Opens and stuff. So they're not playing the same course in the majors every year. So every year they're getting a different venue with a different layout.
Don't forget Sakura with locations in Chesapeake and Red Mill and Virginia Beach. Great place for Japanese cuisine. Go by and see Jasmine and the wonderful staff at Sakura right there at Red Mill and Virginia Beach. And, of course, Chesapeake as well by Sam's Club and Walmart as well. Talking to Woods Woolwine right here on Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris as well. And you talk about, what it takes for consistent golf. I guess that's the biggest thing is repetition. I'm sure you talked to that about your patrons there in Newport News.
Yeah, I mean it's like any other sport, It's like you said, it's repetition, muscle memory. It's practice, getting out there and grinding a little bit on the driving range. Short games where you can save a lot of strokes, and a lot of people don't take that into account when they're practicing. They just want to go bang the driver, hit as far as they can. But with the younger generation coming up, I always stress, around the greens, inside of 100 yards. You can cut down on a ton of strokes if you can master that. And, it's also knowing your clubs, knowing the distance you hit your clubs. Because if you get in that spot where you got 90 yards, if you got a 95-yard club, then you got to choke down on it a little bit and, hit a little softer. So, I mean, that's stuff you got to practice to understand how to hit it when you get on the course.
Yeah, there's no timeouts in golf. There's no halftime breaks. I mean, you're out there like an island by yourself. There's no doubles. There's no mixed doubles. It's basically just mano-a-mano, really. And it's you and your mental thoughts. That in singles and tennis is very similar.
No, there's no partner to lay back on if you're struggling. You got to figure it out, and you got to grind through it.
Yeah, your caddy, that's about it. One thing I love about golf, you don't see this in any other sport, maybe tennis, but that's rare as well, that you'll see a guy like Larry Mize who won the Masters competing with guys in their 20s and 30s. I love that about the past historical champions of an event like the U.S. Open go back and still play with people under 50. That's not an easy task.
No, not at all. I mean, it goes back to the days when I was caddying for Fred Funk. He wasn't one of the long drivers. He was one of the shorter drivers on tour, but he led the tour in fairways and regulation. So he kept it in play. So he was able to compete with them, and he was solid with his iron. So I mean, yeah, same today. It hasn't changed that much. You got some guys that are hitting it 350. But that guy that hits it down the middle of the fairway, keeping it in play and is consistent with his irons, he can compete with them because it comes down to making putts.
You mentioned Fred Funk. He did coach golf at the University of Maryland. Talk about his PGA career.
Oh, man, it was impressive. Golf coach. He was PGA member of our section, the Mid-Atlantic section, and, he competed against all the pros in the area during his coaching career, and then he got just his dedication on the driving range. I talked about that just a little while ago. You talking about somebody that would grind on the driving range. He would practice before he went out, practice after he played, and this is even during tournaments. When I caddied for him up at the Michelob, the Anheuser-Busch, after we got done with our round, the first thing we did was go to the range and, hit a couple buckets of balls. But, and his health, he kept himself in good health. He was jogged all the time and, lifted weights and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it was impressive to watch.
We can't forget one person who made several U.S. Open cuts and did very well in the early 80s was Skeeter Heath. I mean, he drove the ball just as good as anybody, and back then he was competing against Jack and Arnold Palmer and all these great players like Weisskopf, Johnny Miller. When you think about it, he was very young, and he still made U.S. Open cuts against some elite golfers.
Oh, yeah. Skeeter was, from what I understand, he was a great player. Obviously was a little bit younger, so didn't get to play against him. I did get to play against him, but I was young, so he would go out and play us 9 holes, and he'd play from his knees, and we'd play from our regular stance, and he would beat us doing that. So his ball striking is amazing. I understand he had some back and health injuries that held him out a little bit, but yeah, I heard he was excellent.
All right, give us your final thoughts on the Newport News Golf Club. One thing about the people are familiar with it because they drive by there right off of Fort Eustis Boulevard. They can see it, and they can see the celebration and lights coming up in a few months too. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, we've done a lot of improvements to the course in the last 4 years, and Brad Pagram's the superintendent here, and he's done an excellent job. Greens are in great shape. Fairways are coming in right now. The rain that just came through is going to help us out with those, and we're just looking forward to a good year. We're open 7 days a week, and we've got leagues and associations, and would love for anybody that wants to join them just to give me a call.
Very good. Woods, all the best to you and your family, and you have a wonderful summer. Thanks for being on Sports Scene on our May edition with Greg Bicouvaris, wherever you get your podcast, and have a great day.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Woods Woolwine right there, the general manager of the Newport News Golf Club. Of course, our good friends at CP Shuckers with 2 locations in Virginia Beach, lunch and dinner daily, sports on TV, eat or be eaten. Stay tuned.
It's now time for What Teased Me Off with Greg.
All right, What Teased Me Off brought to you by Bohemian Amigos Record Shop. Go by and see Eric and the great staff in the Fox Hill location in Hampton. Of course, as you well know, Adam, vinyl records are on the comeback.
Yes, love vinyl records. I have a whole stack at home, and I love going through them. I got my needle on the record, on the vinyl, pretty much 7 days a week.
One place to go to, Bohemian Amigos Record Shop. Like them on Facebook and social media. All right, disproportionate to-go meals. You know, when one thing you eat at the restaurant or eat at the business, and of course it seems like the waitress is exchanging pleasantries. Do you need more refills? How is your food? Blah, 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 good, bad, or ugly. People still write bad Google reviews. But when you take stuff to go, it always seems like everything is compromised, the sides are smaller, and all of a sudden they just forget that this is an adult that's eating.
Yeah, you know, that's the thing is when you get these to-go orders, they're not really meant to be eaten from a to-go box, right? It's almost like you got to sit down and enjoy the full-on experience, and it almost leads to a community thing when you go inside the brick-and-mortar building.
It's kind of creepy, though, when you walk in, you're looking straight ahead at the cash register, and somebody says, "Hey, Greg," and you're like, "Okay, here we go."
Again.
All right. Drive-thrus at bank. I'm sorry, they just have not evolved. There's one thing to do drive-thrus at restaurants and try to get through change if you're not doing credit cards, but drive-thrus at banks, a lot of pleasantries. They're very tight on time. Once it gets 5 o'clock, they don't like doing overtime, as you well know.
Yeah.
It's not like us that do a lot of side gigs. Yeah. They're very rigid about what time they get off, but you know, exchanging pleasantries at drive-thrus and trying to get a transaction done right is not easy.
You know, we're evolving to a time where we can do away with these drive-through things, I think. You know, it's all through the app, you know, and even then, I don't want my personal banking business to be, you know, out publicly like that. I'm just saying this out into the open. Hey, what's your account number?
Yeah.
To the window, you know, it just doesn't seem right to me.
Or say it out loud inside the bank so your neighbor can hear it next door.
It's wild, man.
Right. How about this? Speaking of which, we all have worked with people. We've gone to church with people. We've gone to clubs together. We've gone to business trips, whatever, vacations. People just not carrying their own weight. You know, I always say very simply, matched effort, matched energy. Yeah. Is the person you're dealing with the most pulling their weight?
Yes.
Is somebody that you don't want to be at, let's say, some club meeting, wasting your time, are they pulling their weight? And, you know, whether it's a vacation, business, or personal, and my dad always said this when I was younger, he said, "Who called who?" I'm like, "Dad, who cares? This is before cell phones were relevant." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, now I know what he's talking about. Who's making that effort? Who's making that energy? If you're doing all the calling at them, that other person really doesn't even think about you that much.
Well, it goes a long way, and I'm glad you brought this up because it does tee me off. It's having to clean up other people's messes, right? We all have responsibilities to do to get through the day. We're all very busy people, and when we got to go through and fix other people's mistakes or clean up their own responsibilities for them before we can even get to ours, it really just has a domino effect, and it really does tee me off.
Very good. What else? Anything for you?
Yeah, you know what tees me off, Greg, is littering. Littering tees me off because it's such an easy problem to fix. You know, most litter on the ground is only 30 feet away from a trash can. That's not that far, really, if you think about it. And alone, the United States spends $11 billion annually picking up litter. Just think, I mean, that's our tax dollars going hard to work on something that we could just eliminate ourselves by throwing away our trash. Not to mention, animals mistake it for food and eat it and digest it. That stuff gets into the waterways. Our oceans are right next door. We got to do better.
Yeah, whether it's the city roads like Virginia Beach Boulevard, Jefferson Avenue, and the Peninsula, or the interstates are worse because you got people they're hiring carrying these giant bags of trash because people are lazy and they litter. They don't care about themselves, nor do they care about anybody else.
They say 50 billion pieces of litter along the highways and roads in the United States alone. That is unacceptable.
Nothing clean. And last thing, too, about people flying signs, I get it. But, give to the charities you want to, because a lot of these people are fake and phony, and they don't want to work, and that's what they're doing. I get it if you've got a medical issue, you're homeless, you're sick. That's different. But there still are charities to help you.
Yeah.
But don't harass people. Don't carjack somebody looking for $1.
Yeah. Just be very understanding in this day and age. I mean, a buck is hard to come by these days, and they don't go as far as they used to. So
they certainly don't.
You got to be more understanding. Yes, a lot of people do want to give, but they can't in a lot of situations, and they shouldn't have to feel guilty for that.
And that's what teased me off. Mongolian Grill at Salem Crossing by Walmart at 2029 Lynn Parkway is open daily for lunch and dinner. All you can eat hibachi style on a huge grill, appetizers, and refreshing beverages. Mongolian Grill, where flavor comes alive in Virginia Beach.
Now let's get back to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris.
And welcome back to our second segment of Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris. Hope you enjoyed our first guest, Woods Woolwine from the Newport News Golf Club. Let's welcome our friends from Bohemian Amigos. Go by and see Eric, Noel, and the entire staff right there in Hampton and Fox Hill at 227 Fox Hill Road, right near the Harris Teeter. Great music, great times, vintage vinyl records. Eric is always putting on great shows in the community, sponsoring great events all over Hampton Roads. He's a musician himself. He knows all about records, all about music. Follow them on social media as well. Eric and Bohemian Amigos, thank you for all that you do. Let's welcome George McClain, the owner of the Marksman and Newport News. George, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Greg. How about yourself?
Very good, very good. One thing I wanted to talk to you, since we've been having a lot of cloudy days lately, is light, especially for your home, your business, or your property. Light is always something that deters nefarious people. You've been hearing about break-ins, especially not at homes, but at apartment complexes where they can get a lot of cars at once, or buildings. But light sometimes can deter. Otherwise, the people are just going to do what they've got to do. Want to get your thoughts on lights.
Well, you're exactly right around the home and stuff. What we preach a lot, of course, in a defensive posture, in self-defense, that if you're, out in the evening, of course, daylight savings time. So it's as far as, the natural light, sunlight within, parking lot lights, that if, the only, if you're driving around a parking lot and it's full and it's dark, I say it's full, except maybe it's got one or two spots in the far back side of the parking lot. There's bushes around it, and all that, but the light that's there is inoperative, burned out, or whatever the deal is, and the rest of the lot is lit up normally. We always advise driving around until another spot opens up. Because you're right in what you're saying. That the light really deters most bad guys. If you got someone that's waiting to hijack a car, or to rob you as you get out, or to assault you, or steal your groceries, or your whatever you just purchased coming back in. A dark spot is the perfect place for that to happen. So we always advise taking the safety route, driving around a little bit, and finding a parking spot once somebody else, because everyone that's in the parking lot's not going to stay in the store forever. Someone's going to be coming out and wait on a parking spot that has ample lighting. Lighting in that regard is safety. We kind of recommend same thing around your house. You can get motion sensitive lights that if they detect someone outside in the dark or whatever, these lights are going to light up. And those lights are not very expensive. They're solar powered. We advise everyone to get that, just exactly for the reasons that you just said.
Talking to George McClain of the Marksman and Newport News, Greg Bicouvaris. This is our May edition of Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris on the Audacy app, all over social media, and wherever you get your podcasts. 520 Industrial Park Drive. Go by and see Sherry and the wonderful staff. They're open usually till 6 o'clock. They got great courses there as well, and classes. 757-872-4130. Wonderful Facebook page. Google the Marksman and go by and talk to somebody and learn about it. Some of the questions we get, George, when we're out and about, simple question. Let's just, since we got new audience all the time, is open carry legal in Newport News, and is open carry legal throughout the state of Virginia?
Well, let's define what open carry is for those who may not know. And open carry would be that you are not carrying concealed. Now, to carry concealed, you have to have a permit required by the state of Virginia. We won't get into that particular how-to, but it's on the net, and there's applications you fill out, in the particular county or city that you live. Open carry for not all handguns. There are not all guns. Let me say there are some cities. There's about 7 or 8, and again, I'll let you take the time to look those up, where you cannot carry, say, AR-15, something along those lines. For the most part, carrying a handgun in a holster, not in your hand, in a holster that is not concealed is legal in the state of Virginia. Okay. If you're going to conceal it, then you must have a concealed, handgun permit. And a lot of people like to just give that a misnomer for a name and call it a concealed weapon permit. Well, a weapon can be a knife, it can be a gun, it can be several other things. It is not a concealed weapons permit. It's a concealed handgun permit, and that entitles you to conceal that handgun only. If you have a knife with a blade that's too long for the statute in the state, that's a weapon. And if it's concealed, if you happen to get stopped, arrested for whatever deal, and they search you and find a weapon, not a handgun, that does not meet the state requirements, then you're going to be cited for carrying a concealed weapon. Okay, so there's a big difference there. We can get into all the nuances of that, but that would take probably a 15, 20-minute discussion. So just be aware it's there, but your research is available on the net. If you want to take the time to go ahead and do that, it would behoove you to become familiar with all those laws if you plan on carrying openly or carrying concealed, because there's places that you can't go if you're carrying concealed, schools, this type of thing. So you need to be aware of all this.
Yeah, too. And be careful, too, at grocery stores or wherever you might go as well, because you have to know the laws before you walk into a building. Now, that's a good point, too, George. What about somebody that has a private property business? Technically, they can set the rules, too, or can they not?
Absolutely. Well, not just when we say private property, that could be a business, that could be your home.
Sure.
You're the rule setter. So if in your home you want no guns allowed, and you let that be known, and someone carries a gun in there, you can have them arrested. Same thing with a store. If they've got posted signs that says no firearms, by law you have to abide by that. And you can't, the old adage is, well, they got to find it first. They got to see it, right? Well, Murphy always raises his head, at the least opportune time. So, you walk in some place that prohibits firearms and you have a concealed firearm. Obviously, if you're open carrying, everyone's going to see it. And before you know it, the manager and the cops and everybody else is going to be called. And, they should ask you to vacate the premises, but they could arrest you on the spot. Okay. So again, be aware of the places it's legal for you to carry. So on, public, lands that you're outside, whatever, open carry is legal. You go inside of a structure, whoever, is the manager or the owner of that structure, dictates what their policies are, whether you can carry or you can't carry. And by law, you have to abide by that.
Thank you, George. Don't forget, it's lunchtime. Mongolian Grill in Virginia Beach. Get your grill on at the Salem Crossing location in Virginia Beach. A lot of fun for the family as well. Within that lines, too, George, of course, we're not going to mention locations, but you don't live far from a very big gun club. And I saw this question come up on the internet as well. Surprisingly, is it legal to have a shooting range in your house? I'm like, it must be as big as the White House or the Hampton Coliseum, maybe, but I can't imagine being next to residentials. I know you can't do that in apartments or condos. Why would that even come up? I would think there's not enough space. Most gun clubs are a little bit secluded.
Well, and they're also permitted, as in a paper permit.
Sure.
To allow them to operate as that. And there would be, I think, a difference, a private versus a public. When I say public, you take a membership, you allow the public to come in and shoot. if you have, I suppose, a house large enough to do that, you possibly could until someone, files some kind of a complaint, and then someone's going to come in and start looking at the safety aspects. Do you have proper backstop kind of a thing? If you're the only one that's doing it, and again, I'm like you, I can't imagine someone having, I don't know, if you have a super large house and you've got it set up into the basement or your downstairs area where you might have 25 yards. Would it be possible? I'm guessing probably to some extent, but I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't researched that specific question. Of course, we have our gun range, but that's in Newport News, but we're permitted. We've got all the city permits and the state and everything else to operate with what we're doing. But we're a public facility. It's a private business, but it's open for the public to come in and shoot. So, and I think that would be a big difference when we say private, then it's just for the homeowner's use. You're setting up down there. Safety would be the big thing on my mind as far as a backstop to make sure you're not penetrating the boundary of your house that could possibly injure somebody that's outside or adjoining properties. So I don't know. I'd have to research that a little bit more thoroughly to give you an authoritative answer on that.
All this presented by the Marksman and Newport News. Go by and see Sherry and the wonderful staff. George is there occasionally as well. George is the owner, and of course his family has worked there over the years, family and friends of the Marksman. What are some of the things? We've got summer coming up. What can people look forward to at the Marksman?
Well, usually in the summertime, we're not quite as busy. Everyone's out on vacations and stuff, so it's an excellent time to come, especially if you're just getting into shooting. A lot of times during our heavy times, which is typically in the fall through early spring, which we are kind of there, but we're in that transition period. Next month is June. It's starting the summertime, so June, July, August up until about the time school starts. That's probably the slack time. So, make an effort to come in, check a place out. We sometimes in the heavy seasons, as I started to say earlier, there may be a little bit of a waiting period to get in on the range. We've got 8 lanes, and Saturdays are still typically the busy days, but don't let that distract you. Come on in and take a look around, ask some questions. If you're new to the sport, we'll say, of shooting, we can certainly answer probably all your questions and get you squared away with what you might like to have as accessories. We're not used car salesmen. We're not going to push something to sell it just because that's what we have on the counter. I also advise people before you buy a handgun would be to come in and rent one of ours. Now, we may not have, because we don't have a model of each and every handgun that's manufactured and is made for sale in the U.S., but we've got enough representative that if you're wanting to shoot, say, a smaller 9mm, the Glock 19 would be an excellent one for you to try. And you may not buy a Glock. You may want to buy a SIG. Sig Sauer, and if we don't have a 9mm SIG in the counter, a 9mm is basically a 9mm, so you could try out the Glock 19 and see how you handle that. If you want something larger framed, Glock 17 would be a good I example for you to try out. If you want a different caliber, you like a 45, there's several, and so I would advise you to come in and do that before you make a decision on what you're going to buy.
Very good. Talking to George McClain from the Marksman and Newport News. And whether daytime or nighttime, when you go out in public, George, sometimes we used to think, let's just go to the grocery store and go about our business. But you really got to think, got to watch how you interact with people. You don't know what people are going through, whether you know the person or not. People's mental range could be totally different from yours. Some people don't like pleasantries. So really, it's almost, you never used to have to think about that 20 years ago. But I think, the stress of just day-to-day living, you really have to, one thing is just, if you got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. That usually, you can go home without having to worry about any drama.
Yeah, well, that's very true. I mean, anymore you have to look at those subtle signs. If you're passing someone and you happen to, unless you're walking with your head down, which I don't advise, but if you're walking, you make eye contact with someone. If they give you just a a little bit of a smile. They may, nod their head and not say anything. Those typically, you just, respond in kind. If you got someone that's, looks, like he's looking for a fight, you know what? You might just want to give that person a wide berth. So I'm not advising anyone turn into an extrovert and, not go out and enjoy, life in the open. But in your mind, you've always got to be aware of what you just said. You don't know how this individual is, how they're going to respond to anything. There's been people just walking down the street, especially with this last few months, where you pass someone and just all of a sudden they haul off with a haymaker and cold cock you for no reason at all, or no reason to you. Now they may be jumping on you to rob you or whatever else. So it's always be aware of your surroundings. That's the biggest thing. You can't just, I guess you can. It's law of averages. It says some people totally not caring about their safety or anything else, and these people will live to be a ripe old age and never be attacked. There's others that it seems like every time that they turn around through no fault of their own, something bad is happening to them. So we just advise everyone, be aware of your surroundings. It's kind of like having your head on a 360-degree swivel, but versus just staring at the ground or staring straight ahead. You're looking around. You got to be able to pick out hiding spots, especially as it gets darker. We'll go back to the light thing, and you're walking down a sidewalk or across the parking lot. You got to be aware of hiding places that people could hide, and when you see them, avoid those areas. It's a whole lot better to avoid a fight than to try to have to battle yourself out of one. So it's always be proactive.
Very good. George, all the best to you and your family. We look forward to talking to you next month here on Sports Scene, and thanks for all that you do at the Marksman and your community as well.
Thank you, Greg. You take care and stay safe.
Very good. George McClain from the Marksman. Stay tuned. Virginia Beach, it's here. Mongolian Grill. All you can eat hibachi style on a huge grill. Delicious food, beverages, and fun. Dine in daily or get delivery. 2029 Lynn Haven Parkway, Salem Crossing. See you there.
Now let's get back to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris.
Thanks for listening to the May edition of Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris on the Audacy app, wherever you get your podcasts, right here from Hampton Roads Media Group. I want to thank our wonderful guests today, Woods Woolwine and George McClain, our wonderful producer, Adam Armstrong, who does the afternoon show here at 106.9. Catch Greg Bick on YouTube for great content, commercials, audio, and video. That's GREGBIC, one word, on YouTube. Subscribe as well. Thanks for following Greg Bick on social media. Once again, for Adam Armstrong, I'm Greg Bicouvaris. We look forward to talking to you in June, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sports Scene is produced by GJBTV.com and the Hampton Roads Media Group.